You ever fish the same bait or one spot too long, even though it's not working? We've all asked, how long should I fish here before moving? But we have trouble giving ourselves an honest answer. That's not bad fishing. That's your brain playing tricks on you. Today we're breaking down the bass fishing mistakes your brain makes without you even knowing it, and how fixing them can help you catch more fish. So I'm going to talk about 10 cognitive biases and how it impacts your fishing. Now, we're not going to bog down in a bunch of science and psychology, but just know that these are basic mental shortcuts that our mind uses. All humans use them. The upside is it lightens the load for our brain, helps us get through a complex day a little bit easier. The downside is it gives us some blind spots and we can make some major errors in our decision making, and that really impacts our fishing. Now, tell me if this sounds familiar. If you catch 50 fish during the day, but you lose a big one, what do you remember? That big one, right? Same thing on social media. What if you go home and you post a picture of a big fish? You get 50 comments and likes on there. Everybody says, great job. But one person, your ex or somebody like that, sends a nasty message on it. What do you remember? What drives you crazy all night? That one negative comment, right? Now, scientists think a lot of this dates back to our ancestors. And you think about in our early human existence, if there were bears in the area or mountain lions, if we use the worst case scenario and always thought, man, I need to make sure I don't get eaten by the bear or the mountain lion, that's going to save you. Might keep you from having a beautiful view, might miss out on a meal one day, but guess what? The downside of getting eaten, anytime you think there could be a bear in the area, steering clear, is going to pay off. Now, fast forward to today where life's way more complicated. In this worst case scenario on something like social media or a fishing trip, the fact that one lost fish or one negative comment just ruins our life, well, you can see how these biases sometimes hurt. All right, so let's dive into the top 10 list and let's see how they affect our fishing, with the number one being confirmation bias. And basically, we look for evidence that supports what we already believe and ignore what contradicts it. Hey, does that sound pretty familiar? Basically, we have our favorite spots, we have our favorite fishing lures, and we're going to look for opportunities to use those. We're going to give them a ton of opportunity and stuff that we think aren't good, techniques we don't like, lures we don't like, lakes we don't like. We go to that new lake, 10 minutes in, we don't have a fish, like, oh, this place sucks. I don't like this place. Tie in a new lure that you don't like the Carolina rig or something like that. Start dragging it 10 minutes in. Ugh, this thing never gets bit. Confirmation bias. Now, this can even bleed into the way that we work our lures. Say, for instance, you fish a jig and you always like to drag it. Well, you could hop it, you could really snap it off the bottom, you could swim it, you could lift drop it, a number of different ways. But if you always drag a jig, you're just kind of like, I always catch them by dragging them. Always dragging is the way to go. You never even check the other stuff. Confirmation bias, you think that's the way to do it, and the more you do it, the more you get locked in. That's why kind of in an older age, they say people kind of set in their ways. That's confirmation bias. Now, that perfectly dovetails into number two, called the sampling bias or the testing bias. And basically this says we test things in a skewed way and then act like the results are objective. Case in point, going back to those lures you don't like, you try to frog and flipping and cranking all the stuff that you like to do, not working. Well, you haven't had a bite in 2 hours. The bait that your buddy likes, say like a wacky worm or a shaky head or something, you don't like it, you tie it on and say, oh, I'm going to try this thing. You give it 5 minutes when nothing else is working. After 5 minutes, you're like, see, that stupid shaky head doesn't even work. That's the sampling bias. You don't give it a fair shot, right? So basically, anytime that we try something and we do it with 1 foot out the door already, whether it's try a spot that we don't like, a lure that we don't like, we already think that this lake is no good, I'm over it. Basically, that's a sampling error. You're not giving it a fair shot, and you're trying to basically just confirm that confirmation bias. And where this one bites us, how many times does the lure or the spot that we're like, oh, they're never there, I hate that thing, you try it for like 5 minutes, and then guess what? The tournament gets won there, or you talk to your buddies and like, oh, they caught him on that lure that I hate, or everybody caught him down that part of the lake that I hate. Guess what? We write it off too fast. Even though you think you tried it, you really didn't. Now, number three is the availability heuristic. Complex name for just saying we judge how likely something is based on how easily it comes to mind. So in layman's terms, basically this means that the brain confuses memorable with probable. So basically something that I can really remember, stands out vividly, like my biggest fish ever, my best day ever on the lake. My mind keeps going back to it and thinks, yeah, that's probably going to happen.
So our favorite spots, again, and our favorite lures, this is one more thing that anchors us to it. Why do we always feel that tug? You go 2 hours on a lake without catching them, you can't help yourself but go back to the spot where you caught them before. Even if that was March and it's July right now, you got to go back there and check it. Now, on the flip side, this is why I got customers come to Lake Fork all the time, because if you catch one big fish, it's a lake that's notorious for being horrible, but when you catch them, they're great big ones. So you forget about the fact that you only caught a few fish the whole week, but you did catch one that was giant, and it brings you back. It's also what brings you back to whatever you fished the last time on the lake, the lures that worked, and the spots that work, like we talk about. It draws you back to that history when you should be looking at the current conditions. So number 4 is the anchoring bias. And if you've ever bought a car before, you're probably familiar with this one. It basically says, we rely too much on the first piece of information we see when making decisions. Now, I used to be in sales before I started fishing full time, and this is a technique that they told you. And this anchoring bias works even if the number is unrealistic. Now, let's say you're going in to buy a new truck, and you think the truck's worth about 40, but if you walk in there, the salesman, he's taught to tell you that, oh yeah, this truck, 55,000. Well, I mean, you almost drop over and you're like, oh my God, this thing's so expensive. I can't afford this thing. I can't believe he's charging so much. But he set that, all of a sudden your mind, it's anchored, 55,000. Now when he tries to sell it at 44, it's like, well, he's come down from the mid 50s to, 44. I'm getting a good deal. When you were thinking originally walking in there, it should be 40. That's the anchoring. Now in fishing, this is a little bit different, but so many times to me, that first fish of the day we catch when we go somewhere, you tie on 10 different baits. You get ready for that trip. You're all excited about it. You go there. The first fish you catch is on a June bug general, flipping it to a bush. Well, guess what? Your mind right away is like, oop, they're in the bushes. Oop, June bug's the right color. And it's got to have the green flake, and it's got to be the 6-inch size one, not the 5. All of a sudden, all those things just fall in, and you're anchored to like, dude, this is the deal. And for you to get off that mindset that that's the deal for the day, it's probably going to take 2 or 3 hours before you start switching up lures. Some of my fishing buddies, they'll go the whole day after that first bite and just be convinced that's the deal. I fall into that same trap too. Remember, that anchoring, that first bite, right away your mind wants to go to all that stuff's the most important, kind of gets you down a rabbit hole sometimes. So number 5 is loss aversion. And basically we feel losses more intensely than equivalent gains. Basically losing $100 hurts way more than winning $100. Now this explains FOMO, or fear of missing out, a little bit. How many times are you catching little fish and you have to catch a bigger one to be able to go get a check in a tournament and do well? But guess what? The little ones are biting and you just can't pry yourself away. You don't want to miss any more of the bite there and miss out on that action, because maybe it's over when you come back. And then the flip side of it is how many times are you fishing and you're not getting bit on something you think is going to catch big fish, and you spend an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, but you don't want to leave. You know you can go somewhere else and catch fish. They might just be limit fish or smaller ones, but you're afraid that, oh man, the second I leave, somebody else is going to come in here and they're going to throw this frog through here and they're going to catch the big ones. I know they're about to bite. You just can't leave, right? And then along the same lines, how many times do you get snagged up on a stump or a boat dock or something so shallow and it's so jagged and nasty up there? It's a $3 lure, but you don't want to lose that lure. And you risk taking your boat way up in the shallows and pushing off with your rod, where you can either break your rod or you can tear up the side of your boat, but you just can't let yourself get rid of a perfectly good bait, right? Even though it's a $3 bait and you have 50 of them and you're about to break your rod, trying to get them off and push it off that stupid stick there. Yeah, I'm starting to get red-faced just thinking about it. Can't let it go, can we? And then the final one on this, and this is the biggest one we all get hung up, is when you lose a big fish. If you catch a bunch of fish in an area and then you have a big one, you jump it off. I mean, it just, not only are you sick to your stomach that you lost it, but then it's like, it just train wrecks your whole day and you can't move on. And that's also part of what they call the Zirniak effect, or I'm not even sure how you pronounce it, but basically it says, we remember unfinished or uninterrupted tasks more vividly than completed ones. Basically, when you don't land that fish, you aren't completing that loop. It feels unfulfilled. If you catch the big one and then they stop biting, you feel fulfilled, you can move on. When you don't catch it, I mean, I've fallen into this. I don't know. I mean, it's like you feel like, well, if I stay here, maybe he'll bite again, or here I'll just fish around, let that spot rest, I'll move back there. You just don't feel complete, and you can't move on. I don't care if it's a tournament or a fun fishing day. I mean, it just train wrecks you, and then you go fish that. If you finally leave and go down the lake, what do you want to do? You want to come back to that darn spot and fish it again, just because you can't get it out of your head. Mental bias. I'm going to have to crank up the AC in here. I'm starting to get heated under the collar. I mean, these are things that get under our skin, and you can see, I'm sure you've been there. It definitely gets to you, right? Number 6 is the self-serving bias. And tell me if this sounds like you and me and all fishermen. We credit ourselves for success and blame others or circumstances for failure. If we catch him, it's all like, oh man, I figured it out. I was fishing. I found this spot. Nobody else found it. Or I figured out how to work this bait. Everybody else is going through there and they couldn't catch him. And man, I was just running circles. Or I was fishing off the back of the boat and the guy in the front, he couldn't catch a single one. But I was sliding my worm in there and fishing it. I was fishing it this slow, and that was the deal, right? But what happens if you don't catch him? Then it's, well, somebody else got on my spot, or they weren't biting today, or the weather conditions. It's never me, right? It's I figured out the fish. I caught him. It's me. I'm the hero, and it's they screwed it up. As they say, success has 1,000 fathers and failure is an orphan. Well, that sounds like a bass fisherman to me. Now, number 7, we kind of hit on this one before, but that's negativity bias. And basically, it's we pay more attention to negative experiences than positive ones, and negative experiences are just more sticky. It's a known flaw, and this is one of the biggest flaws of humanity. It gives us that pessimistic, negative outlook when things aren't going well. If like for me as a tournament fisherman, or if you play golf or any sports, or even at work or with family or whatever, if things aren't going well, it can steamroll, and it just drags us down. We get pessimistic, and we're going through the motions. We don't have any confidence. We don't perform as well. This one's a trap. I think we're all aware of it and need to do better on it, but this is the toughest one to overcome. So being aware of it is the first sign, though, and know that we're falling into it. It's one of those that you have to avoid it, and actively, this literally takes active work to avoid this and stay out of it. Now, number 8, this sounds like a bass fisherman too. It's called the recency effect, and we remember the most recent things better than the earlier ones. Tell me if this sounds like you. It sounds like me. You're fishing something, you haven't had a bite for a while, you do all sorts of, you change up, right? And then you finally switch a worm, and you go to green pumpkin with purple flake, and then you dip this much of the tail in chartreuse, right? And then you if you're looking on live scope, you finally you work the bait just perfectly, and you put it right in front of them, and oh my God, there's a big one, and you work it all this expertly and stuff, and you get him to bite. Or if you're not using scope, you're just going down the bank, you haven't seen any good laydowns for hours, and all of a sudden you find this classic perfect laydown or something, and you flip in there, you catch that fish, and guess what? What do we attribute? Is it the skill and the perfect cast and working it just the way, or just the right piece of cover? No, that worm has the purple flake in it, and that much of the tail, not that much, it's just that much. That much was dipped in chartreuse. Ooh, man, I don't think I have any more of those purple flake worms, and I think I put too much chartreuse in there. Recency bias. The last thing we put way too much emphasis, and a lot of times it's the wrong thing. It's the little thing, that last little tweak we do that any color worm would have worked. It's all the skill that you use, not that stupid little chartreuse, but that's what sticks in our head. Now, these last two, these are big time traps for bass fishermen, and I think we have to be aware of this, and really, if you're tournament fishing or fun fishing, these really impact you. Number 9 is the clustering illusion, and it says, we see patterns in random data even when there are none. What are we trying to do when we're bass fishing? We're always looking for patterns, right? And our mind goes to patterns as well. We start off the day, or all of a sudden you get into a cove and you catch one off the third dock post and another one off the third dock post, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, they're on the third dock post, or you just catch one off a lay down and another stick or something like that, and it's like we're trying to fill in all the blanks. It could be that they're on random pieces of wood, or they're on docks, but right away we're trying to fill it in and say, well, it was on the shady side, and it's when I was popping my lure just like that, and I had to be in the first quarter of the cove and all this stuff. Yeah, all that might be true, but our mind is trying to just fill in all the examples lead to jump to all these conclusions when there might not be a pattern there. It might just be like, well, there are only 2 pieces of wood in this cove. The next one has 37 laydowns. The next one has 82 docks. The fact this one only had 2 docks in it, 2 laydowns here, maybe that's the deal. It's random. It's not necessarily a pattern. So our mind wants to jump to the pattern, and that's good that you're thinking that way, but you have to remember, don't let it get too far out in front. Start to build it, but try to keep an open mind that, okay, maybe it's this, but I'm not convinced until I see this start to happen more and more times. When I can call my shot, and now the 4th, 5th, 6th time, this is starting to happen on a regular basis, that's when I start to get a little more sure and run it around the lake and other places. All right, this last one, number 10, you'll know this one pretty quickly when I talk about it. It happens to all of us, and this, even though when we know it's happening, it's hard to overcome, and you never know what the right call is, but it's the sunk cost fallacy. And basically, we stick with bad decisions because we've already invested in them, and it makes it hard to walk away from bad choices. How many times have you seen a bedfish, and it's a big one, and if it's a tournament or a fun day, all of a sudden you start spending 10 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, like you just don't want to give up. Or things that worked in practice, how often are you going to give up on those on tournament day, even though it's, not working an hour, 2, 3 hours into the day? Or first thing in the morning, you run up the lake, you run 45 minutes up there. In practice, it was great. It was clear. Last night it rained. It's all chocolate mud blown out. If it was a normal weekend, you'd pull into that cove and you'd just say, ooh, this is blowing out. I'm out of here. But no, we caught them yesterday or the week before, and you just can't give it up. It's that sunk cost. I spent 45 minutes running up here. I've already spent an hour on this bedfish. I spent all this time in practice catching these. I'm not going to that wasn't all just wasted. I'm going to make it happen. These are hard to overcome. Sometimes being stubborn pays off. Sometimes it takes 2 more minutes and all of a sudden things work out. You make a little adjustment. A lot of times if you go down in flames, you've already spent that previous time. Don't let that burden you too much. All right, so there you have it. There's my top 10 list. Sounds familiar for me. I'm guessing you probably run into a few of these yourself. If there's any pitfalls or mental traps that you run into, things you can't come over, leave them down in the comments. Let's talk about those a little more.